17. Stress influence tendency. Everyone recognizes that sudden stress, for instance from a threat, will cause a rush of adrenaline in the human body, prompting faster and more extreme reaction. And everyone who has taken Psych 101 knows that stress makes social proof tendency more powerful. In a phenomenon less well recognized, but still widely known, light stress can slightly improve performance, say, in examinations, whereas heavy stress causes dysfunction. But few people know more about really heavy stress than that it can cause depression. For instance, most people know that an acute stress depression makes thinking dysfunctional because it causes an extreme of pessimism, often extended in length and usually accompanied by activity-stopping fatigue. Fortunately, as most people also know, such a depression is one of mankind's more reversible ailments. Even before modern drugs were available, many people afflicted by depression, such as Winston Churchill and Samuel Johnson, gained great achievement in life. Most people know very little about non-depressive mental breakdowns influenced by heavy stress. But there is at least one exception, involving the work of Pavlov when he was in his 70s and 80s. Pavlov had won a Nobel Prize early in life by using dogs to work out the physiology of digestion. Then he became world famous by working out mere association responses in dogs, initially salivating dogs, so much so that changes in behavior triggered by mere association, like those caused by much modern advertisement, are today often said to come from Pavlovian conditioning. What happened to cause Pavlov's last work was especially interesting. During the Great Leningrad Flood of the 1920s, Pavlov had many dogs in cages. Their habits had been transformed by a combination of his Pavlovian conditioning plus standard reward responses into distinct and different patterns. As the waters of the flood came up and receded, many dogs reached a point where they had almost no airspace between their noses and the tops of their cages. This subjected them to maximum stress. Immediately thereafter, Pavlov noticed that many of the dogs were no longer behaving as they had. The dog that formerly had liked his trainer now disliked him, for example. This result reminds one of modern cognition reversals, in which a person's love of his parents suddenly becomes hate, as new love has been shifted suddenly to a cult. The unanticipated extreme changes in Pavlov's dogs would have driven any good experimental scientist into a near frenzy of curiosity. That was indeed Pavlov's reaction, but not many scientists would have done what Pavlov next did, and that was to spend the rest of his long life giving stress-induced nervous breakdowns to dogs, after which he would try to reverse the breakdowns, all the while keeping careful experimental records. He found, 1, that he could classify dogs so as to predict how easily a particular dog would break down, 2, that the dogs hardest to break down were also the hardest to return to their pre-breakdown state, 3, that any dog could be broken down, and 4, that he couldn't reverse a breakdown except by reimposing stress. Now, practically everyone is revolted by such experimental treatment of man's friend, the dog. Moreover, Pavlov was Russian and did his last work under the communists, and maybe those facts account for the present extreme, widespread ignorance of Pavlov's last work. The 2 Freudian psychiatrists with whom I tried many years ago to discuss this work had never heard of it. And the dean of a major medical school actually asked me several years ago if any of Pavlov's experiments were repeatable in experiments of other researchers. Obviously, Pavlov is now a sort of forgotten hero in medical science. I first found a description of Pavlov's last work in a popular paperback, written by some Rockefeller-financed psychiatrist, when I was trying to figure out, 1, how cults worked their horrible mischief, and 2, what should the law say about what parents could do to deprogram children who had become brainwashed zombies? Naturally, mainstream law objected to the zombies being physically captured by their parents and next subjected to stress that would help to deprogram the effects of the stress they had endured in cult conversions. I never wanted to get into the legal controversy that existed about this subject, But I did conclude that the controversy couldn't be handled with maximized rationality, without considering whether, as Pavlov's last work suggests, the heavy-handed imposition of stress might be the only reversal method that would work to remedy one of the worst evils imaginable: a stolen mind. I have included this discussion of Pavlov partly out of general antagonism toward taboos, partly to make my talk reasonably complete as it considers stress, and partly because I hope some listener may continue my inquiry with more success.